So hello, my name is Kirsten Brede. I'm editor at the European Coatings Journal, and today I have a guest here. It's Dr. Steve McDaniel of Reactive Surfaces. They are based in Austin in Texas, and we're doing an interview on carbon capture coating technology. First of all, what are carbon capture coatings?
Well, carbon capture coatings are, first and foremost, they're coatings. These are real coatings. That is, these are polymeric materials that can be spread on a surface thinly that will adhere to this surface and then be cured in a polymeric fashion. So they are in every way a coating. What's cool about them is these particular coatings is when you do cure them on a surface and you expose them to sunlight, they will photosynthesize. And then when they photosynthesize, they of course capture carbon, ergo the name, carbon capture coatings. And then they go ahead and fix that carbon using the photosynthetic process into carbohydrates. And in this particular case, because of the algae that we're using, which are modified somewhat, they actually go ahead and sequester that glucose into a polysaccharide like cellulose. They are, I guess, also that Kirsten is if I, as a coatings person, I like to know, what are the polymers and why do these work as opposed to other polymers. These particular coatings, photosynthesis itself requires carbon dioxide. It also requires water. Mm-hmm. And these are combined utilizing a photon of sunlight and produce the carbohydrate and oxygen. Because these coatings, because the algae require water, we have to do a couple of things. We have to make sure that these coatings can be hydrated easily and can remain hydrated and can be rehydrated easily. So there is that. Because they're hydrated, you want to make sure that they don't develop mold and mildew. And also you want to make sure that they have free exchange of gases, atmospheric gases. They need to sequester carbon dioxide. They need to gather it, and then they need to release oxygen. And so with all of those things kind of being, the other thing is that they have to be clear. They have to be translucent to sunlight. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, but how can they help to balance the output of carbon dioxide?
It's a gargantuan problem. In 2018, we as a species emitted 31.7 billion tons, gigatons, mm-hmm. of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
That's amazing.
Primarily from the combustion of fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's hard to think about what does that mean, 31.7 billion. I'll give you something that I tell my children. A million seconds is 11 to 12 days. A billion seconds is like 31 to 32 years. But 31.7 trillion kilograms, a trillion, is a geological epoch. It's about 32,000 years. And you multiply that by 31.7 and you get over a million years of seconds. So a trillion of something, a trillion kilograms that we put into the air each year is almost hard to wrap your head around. Mm-hmm. Okay? But what it says is that the response, the way we're going to get this, we're going to fight it, has to be equally large. I think that the coating industry is uniquely situated to do that, because one of the things we do in this business is coat very, very large amounts of surface area. Mm-hmm. And it's that surface area that will act as a giant filter to the atmosphere. I don't know of any other material or any other business, any industry that can do this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And how did you come up with this approach? What's your motivation behind it?
Well, first of all, I need to brag about my team. My team is comprised of as you know, we are a innovation company, and we actually sit or sited near the University of Southern Mississippi. So we have a ready access to a lot of polymer scientists. Okay, so we have polymer scientists. We also have extremophile biologists. We also have geneticists. We have an algologist now amongst us. And so when I say that I came up with something, I really want you to understand it's a team effort.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Got it.
But what gave me the idea is our business in reactive surfaces, we go into nature and we take out functionality, an enzyme, a peptide or something like that, and we entrain it into a coating and ask it to do what it did in nature in this coating, degreasing a surface, things like that, decontaminating a surface. In fact, I'll be talking tomorrow in Berlin about this. But I've always toyed with the possibility that it might be possible to actually entrain living cells. When I was actually a member of the 2003 Swedish polar Arctic expedition, and folks from the University of Munster were also there as well. And when you're an astrobiologist, one of the things you're looking at is biology that occurs in extreme places. So if you go to the Arctic, you won't find trees growing everywhere. You won't find a lot of moss on the ground. Where you'll find the biology, where you'll find the living organisms, is in rocks, literally within the surface of the rock. They're called lithotrophics. And right below the surface of the rock, you'll see green layers. And those algae are doing just fine in that area. You'll also see lichen that are growing on rocks. This is in the Arctic. But they can do it, and they do quite well. So that kind of gave me the idea. Is it possible to basically replicate the ability of algae in lichen? Because they almost look like a coating if you've ever seen on a rock. Can we duplicate that? Can we replicate that? We didn't know for sure if we could, but we have.
And how far have you come so far with this?
We have several generations of coatings thus far, and the good thing about it is so far we haven't met a polymer system that we don't like. Some are far better than others. Like I told you, you want coatings that maintain the hydration levels. Some coatings are meant to get rid of water and keep it out, right? So those don't work as well.
Right.
But some of the hydrogels and some of the other kinds of systems that we've used work extremely well. And the algae, not only, we train algae in this, the algae not only survive but thrive. The bottles the surfaces get quite green. They stop at a certain point, but they get very green, they're very pretty.
Talking about the bottles, could you explain just very in a few sentences how the technology functions, how it works?
Sure. So if you mentioned bottles, the reason that we are using bottles right now is because they're readily available, like a Coke bottle. They're translucent, and so they all allow light in, and also they will block a little bit of UV. These organisms can't take too much UV. And they allow us to keep the hydration levels quite high. Okay. But the technology basically is this, is that we take genetically modified organisms, algae, that are food grade algae, just like spirulina and things like people eat. And we make those algae overproduce cellulose, so that when we entrain them in a coating and they receive sunlight, they will combine carbon dioxide, which they capture, which the coating does a good job of pulling down. And they will then convert that carbon dioxide with a molecule of water and a photon of sunlight to a polysaccharide. That polysaccharide can just stay there, but these particular algae are good at taking that polysaccharide, glucose in this case, and combining it up into a polysaccharide, cellulose. And that polysaccharide just gathers on the surface. These coatings are rather elastic and they can expand, and so you gather a lot of 4 and 5 times the weight of the coating in cellulose. Cellulose, of course, is a commodity,
right?
And that's how it works. Yeah, it's simple to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised that you were using plastic bottles, because everybody's talking about plastic waste and microplastic and so on. So as far as I understand, you would only start using plastic bottles and then go on to another stage?
Yes. I almost don't like to focus on the plastic bottles. They, in a lab, you probably are aware of this, you're always trying to do it the cheapest way you can. And so when we when we knew we had the surfaces, when we knew we had the coatings, then we needed a whole lot of surface area. And these coatings, if they're going to pull down the amount of carbon that's in there, they have to be painted on massive amounts of surface area, okay? And you can make your own surface area.
Right.
If you just use like, for instance, bottles or plastic sleeves and everything like that. And that's what we were looking for. So let me give you an example. In a meter square of a horizontal surface, you can erect a meter cube of sleeves that contain bottles in them, and get something like 50 meters squared of surface area, just in a meter cube, sitting on a meter square of horizontal ground.
Yes.
Well, obviously you can iterate that as many times as you want to. You can go up many stories, you can go out 100 kilometers, or 100 meters or 100 meters, and you have a really enormous amount.
Yes, that makes sense.
Of coatable surface area, and that's why. Obviously, the bright folks in the industry, if we can pull together a consortium like I'm hoping, they will come up with all sorts of different surfaces. Right. They'll outdistance us quickly, and much better surfaces, much better volume to surface densities or efficiencies. Yeah.
You just mentioned a consortium, a possible consortium.
Yeah.
What's your plan about finding partners? What kind of consortium can this be?
Yeah. So when we read about the timelines that we have in order to achieve a large drawdown of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, they're short. In fact, they're frighteningly short.
Right.
And no one company, I think, can do it that quickly. We need to energize a consortium within the industry that already has the distribution networks. They know how to build coatings. They've got the polymer chemists, the additives chemists, they've got the supply chains, all of that ready to go. And if we can do that, then there's a pretty good chance that we can actually, as an industry, take a big bite out of the atmospheric carbon dioxide. We call that anthropogenic, meaning men made it. The anthropogenic carbon dioxide. Yeah.
But how can companies become involved?
Well, this is the first interview we've given. Here in another month there'll be a technical article. I've been working with even people within your organization, the Vincent Network, about beginning to have forums where we will challenge the technology. We will give it a good scientific analysis, and then we hope that people will take the technology in-house. And we are going to make it very simple for them to do so.
Right.
They can reach us out on our websites, our phones, our emails, and so as this year, I hope, is what it will be around consortium building. I would hope that by the end of that year that we will have a consortium of a number of different companies who will actually have these coatings in their own polymer laboratories actually working. And the more the merrier.
Right. Are there any obstacles that still have to be overcome in terms of regulations, raw material supplies, etc.?
Yeah. Well, the good news on the raw material side is at least the coatings that we have right now are renewable resources. They are actually grown. They're polymers that are made in algae themselves or in bacterial fermentation. So that resource is sort of endless, and we can reuse it and renew it. The algae, of course, they grow up in solutions. As far as regulatory roadblocks, we were very cognizant of this from the very beginning, because again, speed is all important We don't have time. And by the way, I must tell you that we should all be very thankful that the regulatory people around the world are protecting the environment and protecting human health. That's what got us into trouble in the first place.
Yes, I know.
All right, so let us hope that they're going to do a very good job of this.
Right.
But let's also give them an easy job. Let us use renewable resources. Let's use things that people eat as polymers that have been around for years. Okay, and let's use algae that again people use as food. If we can do that, then we make their job a lot easier. Right. And what we're hoping is that in-house regulatory people at in the coatings industry itself will go ahead and start working with the regulatory people from the very beginning. And so that there won't be roadblocks at all. I don't foresee any such roadblocks, but yeah, that's what we should do.
And are you addressing only coatings producers, or are other companies addressed as well, like raw material suppliers?
Oh, when I say consortium, I should make sure that I do mention that I'm not talking just about coatings manufacturers. Okay, I'm talking about the distribution side of it, as well as the supply side. Okay, and so it will be important for us to use all of the technical and intellectual assets that we have as an industry, and then realize those places where we don't have an expertise, say in algae production, and rapidly work with somebody else that can give that. We already have algologists on our team, and so it'll be important to take those people in as well.
Okay, it's going to be interesting when the consulting will be established.
Yes, it's interesting. The coatings are actually fairly pretty, by the way.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.